We were being told to do two things. One is you get to an engineering or you get to a doctor. Grinded into thinking that you need to do either one of these to be successful. You didn't have a choice then. Just imagine the computer vision is better than a human vision today.
Which areas do you see technology having the biggest impact in everyday life?
So there is an age of information, and we are in the age of intelligence, and it's going to be extremely powerful.
Once upon a time, you probably had to be very, very good at technology, very, very good at science and math to get into technology. But now there's a lot of industry experience that's also becoming very valuable, or you might be good at other things, and technology is now becoming an enabler.
Never associate a age with mentorship. Never associate a seniority with mentorship. We're getting into a stage where unrealistic kind of things can happen due to technology.
KSG, welcome to my podcast, Why, Who, Where. It's a real pleasure having you. We meet so many times. We talk about so many things, technology, non-technology, cricket, and all the common areas of interest that we have. But I'm so glad you accepted my invitation to be on this podcast because I think someone like you has so much to offer to all the people that are out there looking to build a career in technology, especially. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zubin, and wonderful to be in this podcast show of yours, and be delighted to share a few snippets of the past, present, and the future, and look forward to this podcast.
Always start with, going back to where it all began, right? We are such a big country. I mean, in India, and I understand you're from Tamil Nadu, and I've always been very, very interested. Where did all this begin for you? I mean, since childhood, what was childhood like growing up, going to school? Were you always this interested in technology, or was it science or something else?
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town. I like to call myself as a small town boy. Grew up in a tier three town from Tamil Nadu. Dad was an educationist. Studied in a government school from the tier three town. We didn't move around though. However, the school itself was nearby. It's just a half a kilometer kind of stuff. So it's a same place, same location till plus two. So it's like the plus 12 you are in till the standard 12 used to be in one place, studied in a one government school kind of a setup. Because you grew up in a family with lots and lots of educationists and people associated with education, studies was something which you are inculcated with, right? And so you are being grinded with the principles of being good in academics. You need to study well to get to some level. And those days in 80s, Ruben, if you recollect, we were being told to do two things. One is you get to an engineering or you get to a doctor, a kind of a discipline. So that was well grounded set up that way, where you have been grinded into thinking that you need to do either one of these to be successful. You didn't have a choice then. So I did that till 12th and did reasonably well, and got into engineering college in Trichy, which was then called Regional Engineering College Trichy, now called NIT. And suddenly you move from being a small town boy into a multicultural setup, right? And this was one of huge change management personally for me in those days, right? So just imagine you grew up in a single cultural setup from a tier three in a particular state and then go into a regional engineering college. The reason for I'm saying that is because in those days, the RECs used to be multicultural in nature. 50% of the seats used to be from multiple states and 50% of the seats from the local state. So that was a very great thing in the hindsight if you actually look at it. Even during the hostels when you stay, you tend to be associated with a different state. So you're not you are not grew up, but you didn't evolve into somebody who is very with a monolithic cultural setup. So you get into a multicultural setup. So that was a great thing to have when you look back. but we didn't enjoy it that time. But in the hindsight, it does teach you a lot of things. Working with multiple culture, multiple set of people from different states, so you mingle and so on and so forth. So that's the period of a college life, and then from then on moved into. I, as an individual in late 80s, if you actually see, there used to be a fad for people going into US, doing their masters, and then or you get into an MBA from IIM, right, CAT, and that kind of setup. So you are either a GRE person or you are a CAT person. I chose the midway path, right? People who do not do CAT, people who do not do GRE, and then you end up wanting to stay back for whatever reasons. There can be many reasons: personal, professional, your own liking, and so on and so forth. You end up something called a research assistant. So I ended up in a role called RA, right, which continues to be there in large universities. I ended up with Tata Institute, Indian Institute of Science, did that for some time, then ended up joining an organization in late 80s called Microland. Those days, it used to be a startup. And this was the era of where you have many systems of PC based, individual PC computing era, which has started. So if I will map my journey, career journey, with that of various curves which has happened in the technology side. So, but you ended up joining a company which is a system integrator company those days, late 80s, then early 90s. You know what happened during the dream budget, which happened during the early 90s. From then on, moved on into various loans within Microland, and ended up doing the various kind of technology role. But during the process, I always wanted to be in the technology side because you tend to be associated with people who are in the tech side of things, right? So you had set of people who didn't want to go abroad or in the process of going abroad, wanting to have a short career in a firm like Microland. So there was a bunch of good people in within the organization. So you ended up moving with people who are tech and tech only. So that sort of nailed my career early, very, very early. So be with tech, learn tech, right? And mind you, this is services industry. This is not a creation of a technology company like a Google or a Microsoft or something. We are just followers and implementers and configurators, so much to say, right? And so you are associated with bunch of people who are like-minded, wanting to do things, wanting to learn, and that's been the early part of life. So I did that first few years in a field role, or what we used to call branches in those days, in Microland, and then moved into very early part of my life. I moved into my Karma Bhumi, Bangalore, in '93. Since then, I've been a Bangalorean, more a Bangalorean than born brought up in Tamil Nadu as a Tamilian, one can say. But it is very, very important to understand that here is a person who got a break very early in a corporate role. So I ended up moving into a corporate setup very early in my career. And in the hindsight, it worked to my advantage in setting up what is called the Center of Excellence currently. But in those days, it used to be called technology groups or technology support groups, what is called as TSG. Set up the networking support group, and then computing, and so on and so forth. So if you mirror some of the career roles which I have done thus far in the last 3 decades, it has sort of taken 6 or 7 S curves, right? And I will list them. I skipped the first one, which is the typical Unix monolithic computing mainframe mini, because that happened in the late 70s and early 80s. But then moved on into a PC-based computing role, right? And those are the early days of Microland. Then you moved into systems where you have into network systems, right? And those are the days where you have a network operating system concept was evolving, Novell came up, and then later on Windows NT and so on and so forth. And then we moved into a enterprise, a large private application kind of setup. So you evolved into that S curve of setting up large data centers, private cloud, as we call it today. I evolved into another S curve called cloud computing at a later point of time, which I will recollect in my next few roles post Microland era. then the current one being the Gen AI stuff. So I sort of followed my career has always been an additive of all these S curves, right? So you have the first S curve or the independent computing, which is PC based. The
Yep.
second one was on the network side, and the third one being enterprise application, then cloud computing, then Gen AI, and along the way, multiple other functional expertise, which have been built over a period of time. A long answer, but I just thought I will capture
I
that
think that's I think
essence.
that's very pertinent, KG, because remind me again, how many CCIEs have you done?
Yeah. So in all these S curves, thanks for bringing that up. In all these S curves, you tend to be want to be a technologist. And I
Yep.
early in the career in the company which I worked, we always believed that the proof of the pudding is in having the hands-on, right? And here is the CCIE one was one of the biggest. Achievement those days. When you look back, the trigger happened with a client. It's a small story, I would say. I give the narrative. Here is a client which is the current GCC. We call it as Global Capability Center. This was one of the global capability centers, which was in the early days of Texas Instruments TI. Here is one a client of ours who was a CIO then. We were trying to design a solution, and then he was asking, "Hey, is this?" We were going into the board, explaining how the network should look like and how the system should interact, and so on and so forth. With lots of security thrown in and things like that, and it was one of the state of the art at that point in time. And he said, "Hey, this system is designed by you or by my client, and I want that's fine, and I accept that, but I want this to be authenticated, or you put a stamp on top of it saying that it has to be designed by CCIE, and then I will buy it." And I said, "Yeah." He was planning for a 3 month ahead kind of a rollout. I said, "We can get it done. If it is CCIE, yeah, if it's fine, and I can get clear that exam within 2 months." I didn't know what CCIE was that point in time, and then he ended up discovering a lot about that. And I finally figured out you have to go all the way to US then, unlike current model. So you have to go to San Jose to Cisco Labs to clear the exam, which we did. And then we came back to him and said, "Yeah," and then I did clear the exam. And then I told him that, "Hey, this is done. Now what next?" And he ended up issuing within a week's time a PO to the company which I worked then. So that was the trigger point, right? And it's a huge learning there is that here is a client who's driving you to be a global class, and here is the client who's driving you to be excellent in your own space. And he doesn't want to take anything other than the fact that it has to be a proven outcome based on certain criteria and facts which are being established, and not go by any theoretical considerations. And so that was a great trigger, and I continue that even today. Coming back to answer your question, I continue to recertify, because the key is in redoing what you are doing, relearning what you are doing, what you have learned. So I have done that recertification for almost 2 decades plus, and I've been an ambassador to the program. Continued that philosophy of relearning, learning, certifying into other areas of computing, cloud certification, and more recently AI and related aspects of it. So that's the short story, but there have been great learnings from that. The trigger came from the client. The trigger came from the client, and who established the fact that you need to be global class. You prove it to me that you are one, kind of a setup. So that was the greatest achievement then. When I look back, it's not a great thing because people do it day-to-day basis, but it was challenging then because you have to go all the way. The kind of tools and resources available were very minimal, unlike the current setup. But you ended up doing that, and then you continue to that, and that habit certainly taught me a lot, and I continue to do that even today with my own personal labs on Gen AI and so on and so forth. So, but thanks to that trigger, you have inculcated yourself into a particular habit of learning, and that continues even today for almost close to 3 decades now.
Coming, like you said, from a tier three city, uh, what did you face as probably the biggest challenge as you moved, as you came into Bangalore? Um, because I do remember India has always been the very IIT, IIT is everything kind of, people coming. Even if you came from the REC, it was, at least I remember when I started headhunting, more than 2 decades ago. I mean, an IITN was an IITN, but I have met some phenomenal people coming from so many institutes. Um, how much did you, was that ever a challenge you had to overcome, or how much of a challenge is that anyways? I mean, or any other challenge coming from, like I said, not one of the metros, but from one of the smaller towns and coming into a large city, trying to get into technology.
Yeah, it used to be very challenging, Zubin. At least at the college times, not during professional times. Professional times also you have to get past some of the stereotyping which happens in all this. But it did. There used to be challenge saying, "Hey, can you do it? You from a small town, you may not be expressive enough, and you may not have the ability to communicate set a narrative and try and lead a team kind of stuff, right? Say these are some of the narratives which are already pre-built in some of the setup. But I tend to look at it completely differently, and which I followed in some of my later day recruitment process as well, right? Given everything else being equal, I ended up picking somebody who is from a tier three or tier two or tier four, felt they were more hungrier than the other. Not to disrespect anything from the larger set of community who are doing very well in the tier one as well. But everything else being equal, I learned the art of picking some people who are more who have shown more hunger. But yet it was challenging to break some of these stereotypes. These are things which are markers which are already put into individuals, saying that, hey, you're from Town, you cannot do this, you cannot do that kind of stuff. But over a period of time, when you start proving yourself, and then it becomes very systemic, saying, hey, you become the system, right? Hey, here is a role model, here is the person who has come from here, right? I just give an example. I had a great guy from Andhra in my team where we built a classical training system. Right now we say that, hey, EdTech and yeah, Khan Academy and so on and so forth. So we built a similar one for training our own people on technology. This guy has been outstanding in database technologies. He never used to communicate that effectively in English. But I used to tell him that, hey, you communicate in whichever model you want. I will figure out how to translate it, kind of stuff. So there have been systems and methodologies which have been designed to cater to such crowd, and then to take their plus and then weave it into what we want as an organization, right? So that's the hallmark of building some teams and giving them the feeling that they are also wanted, right? So we have created some excellent systems even in those days. So we ended up creating a system around database technology. So he ended up going and explaining. We shot the video in those days, and that he could rattle. And his confidence started building up over a time. And then he became one of the greatest database technology. I'm still in touch with him, kind of stuff. So you will go through these bumps and narratives, but the key is to make yourself being the marker to make that change. And then when you become the marker, when I say you, your team, or any individual within your
Yep.
team, then you start becoming, then people will rally around that proposition. And then the whole narrative gets completely deleted or written off over a period of time.
Have you had any idols or mentors or people, that you have who've always, captured your imagination, or who have been very instrumental into shaping your career the way it has been?
Yeah, there have been, if I say that, and in fact, the various points in time, yeah, I first and foremost, I will always advise people to have a mentor, right? Even from the new generation, it's very, very important to have a mentor. It's important to go back and say, hey, How did I do well? And it is important to go back and ask, saying, am I doing well? These are the things which I have done in the last 6 months. Can you give me something which is an independent opinion, right? Which is outside in kind of a field. But there are people who are mentors within when you are in inside out, right? So you are
Right.
within an organization doing something kind of stuff. So there have been many mentors. Some of them are not formal. Many have been informal. Whether you are working with a client, whether you are learning something, whether you are handling a situation, whether you are interacting with a global client, whether you are building a team in Europe, which is a completely different cultural setup. So there have been very informal mentors along the way, and who have coached you, and there have been mentors who have been part of my team, whom I have recruited and I have taken mentorship from. For example, the last role which I played was the CTO at a large company, IT services company, building a large cloud team and a large platform system. There used to be a person who's very, very good in software and creating a platform. So we were creating a large platform built around AI. And so I learned a lot from him on product management, creating a platform, and so on and so forth. So he became a mentor for me, though I was leading him and the team and I was directly managing. So mentors can come from wherever, right? And it is important to seek that mentorship sometimes directly or indirectly, but you will need them at various point in times. They can be your seniors, they can be your juniors. And I always believe that the biggest mentors for when you start aging and in your career is the person who joins newly from college, right? And he can become your mentor because he can teach you something which you can do it in within minutes or days, or you can pick up a lot of things. So it's very important to be open. What is important is to keep your mind open about this mentorship. Sometimes it comes to you, and sometimes you need to seek out. And but at various point in time, never associate a age with mentorship. Never associate a seniority with mentorship. Never associate your own company. It can come from outside, it can come from anywhere. So be open. And I've always been open over the period of time. Yes, to come back to your questions, there have been mentors at various point in time in careers. So over a period of time, you can put a number around 10 to 12 of them who have groomed, shaped you in who you are, what you are, and what you can do to better to yourself. Anybody who can define the better of yourself and then come and coach you, you should take it as a mentor. It can be a technology mentor, or it can be a functional mentor, or it can be your own behavioral mentorship over a period of time.
Right. How do you see the whole technology? I mean, we always used to be, you remember, you might remember in the year 2000, 2001, when the tech bubble burst, right? And all the stocks crashed and everything. Um, Everybody said at that time that technology is done, right? And how do you see this space evolving? I'm bringing one of my questions, which I asked later. I'm probably bringing it up front, where I'm saying, if I'm somebody young starting out in a career today, once upon a time, you probably had to be very, very good at technology, very, very good at science and math to get into technology. But now there's a lot of industry experience that's also becoming very valuable, or you might be good at other things, and technology is now becoming an enabler. How do you see the landscape changing as far as evolution of technology is concerned? And also, what does it mean for somebody who is still in the early stage of their career?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's my favorite topic as well, Zubin. So it's like, just imagine the power of the systems, 80s, late 80s or early 90s, I'll say, or late 90s. The power of the system which we had then to the power of systems now. If you start computing the
Oh my God.
order of magnitude, it's millions. I don't want to say 10 million or 100 million. So the power of computing, the power of storage, the power of networking, the kind of throughput which we are getting out of the systems. or the network or from the application has changed manifold, and it will continue to change.
I don't think people even have an idea, right? How slow it was once upon a time. I think so much gets taken for granted now, you
Absolutely,
know.
absolutely right. So when we are in the famous networking, I set up the first one of the earliest gateways from BSNL from India. I used to be a protocol called BGP those days. It used to give a great kick in setting up an external system, and which is basically a routing system to connect to an external world. So that used to be 2 Mbps, right? So and
Yeah.
here we are talking in order of 10 times or 20 times, 100 times even in many places, even in our mobile devices. But just to come back to your core point, right? We are in a computing age where this is going to be age of too much of information. So there is an Einstein at your desk. Okay. So I would put that as just imagine the computer vision is better than a human vision today. If I make that statement, it's a very, very powerful statement. So what does it mean? Right? And the computer vision is going to be a powerful machine. So vision. So what does it mean to you and me? It may say, oh, okay, KSG, it's fine, great. A computer can see it better. But just imagine apply it to a life science scenario or to your doctor and understanding some of the MRI and scans and other systems. So the systems are going to be extremely powerful, right? So there is an age of information, and we are in the age of intelligence, and it's going to be extremely powerful. I always give that example of three things which has happened in the very short period of last 24 months. I try to put that as not in tech buzzword. Just imagine the Google search bar. I have told you that you know the limitation of the search bar. You can't put more than 32 words. Supposing if I tell you that, hey, you can put infinite words in the search bar, and then you can need not put only text. You can put video, you can put audio, you can put pictures, and then and then you say that, hey, and then you can take the feed from the answer and feed it back as the question, as the chain of reasoning thought, and then you start saying that you can create a simple program or a software by a human speaking to a computer, which can convert your text into a computer language and start creating systems by itself. And then you put this all together, you get a powerful engine or a platform. And then whether you call it as large LLMs, whether you call it as agentic AI systems sitting in your environment, doing many sorts of things. So we are getting into a age where age of intelligence and the power of these systems is going to create enormous amount of use cases across industries. What matters hence is the knowledge of the industry and usage of the platform, because the technology gets created. You get to see the word service as a software now, right? The S has become
Yeah.
inverted, right? Software as a service to service as a software. So, and then you keep one thing in mind. If you come back to your question, I always believe that the next generation is always 2x or 5x more intelligent than the previous generation, right? When I say that, I benchmark it in a matter of decade, right? So if you put decade one to decade two, you will get 5x to 2x, 2x to 5x kind of intelligent change. So you are going to have set of intelligent people coming out from colleges, and you are going to have a large powerful system which is capable of solving very complex problems. So what is important is in understanding some of the domain and industry related problems, so that knowledge is going to be significant, right? And unlike in our setup where only technology understanding, so you set up network, you set up data center, you put up large application, you make sure that you have a large mobile device, you have a large mobile ecosystem, you served an application, it's fine. But here, there are a lot of problems which are already solved, right? So you need to contextualize the problem to an industry. So knowledge about the localization of the country and how the country system works, whether it is a B2B system or a citizen system or a B2B setup, and the knowledge about the industry, where it is heading, that becomes a very important element in the overall cogwheel. I would always advise to say, hey, connect the larger dots within the industry, learn the technology aspect of it, and then start working in a system. So just give an example. The new company, you will end up recruiting for people as part of your job. A 10-man company with a 1 billion valuation with a zero revenue is a given norm today. All right. So how will you recruit for such a people, right? Do you wanted to say somebody says, hey, Zubin, recruit a CEO for such an organization, what skill you will go for? Right. So we are getting into a stage where unrealistic kind of things can happen due to technology. And it's a very, very exciting time to be in 20s. I wish I was in 20s. These powerful global platforms, large NLMs, going to throw open larger opportunities for the people. I would say be hungry, learn technology, align that learning to an industry, and then learn that industry very, very effectively. Don't fall into an hierarchical model of learning or a setup, which is not no more the case in many of the organization. So it's going to be you are going to have the people are smarter, the systems are smarter. So it's a question of putting it all together and staying hungry to learn and be a listener. I was never a great listener in my personal life. You know me very well. But in my professional life, I always listen, right? So it's very, very important to listen to people, experts, define your domain, define your area, pick 20 to 30 game-changing individuals who are thought leaders in that space. Start listening to them, start understanding about the industry, and that will propel their career in a much more 3x or a 5x kind of a more than where they are today.
Fantastic. Uh, how do you, where do you see, which areas do you see uh, technology having the biggest impact in everyday life? This is something, this is just come up to me listening to you. Listening to you is always, where one gets to learn a lot, but it's something that keeps me up also, right? Where is, somebody talked about digital twin, you know, somebody talked about, um, in finance, in medicine, in so many other areas. Where do you as a technologist see, and maybe there's some advice in that for youngsters also, right? I mean, where do you see the biggest impact that you feel technology will have, in your opinion, over the next, say, 5 or 10 years?
No, see, I think there are two areas where it's going to have profound impact, which is go back to our the two largest industries in the world, and one is in the financial services domain, and the other is in the healthcare, right? So there's going to be, mind you, Zubin, you just say a child born now is going to have I say average age of 90 to 100. A child born
Yeah.
2 decades back, the average age was around 70 to 80, 80 plus. So that keeps increasing, right? And so there's going to be huge change on the way drugs are discovered. Going to be huge change on the healthcare and the life science space, personal drug, personal discovery of some of these medicine, and everything around healthcare, right? The way care is given to a patient, whichever part of the world, is going to have a huge impact in using these technologies. That's one. Second, on the financial services side, right? So it's very, very important to understand AI and Gen AI and related technology is going to have profound impact on financial services aspect of it. So it's very, very important for even for the current generation to understand that, hey, you don't just understand technology for the sake of it, right? See how financial services segment is served or in an industry like in US, in Europe, in large parts of Asia, within Singapore. What are the variances in that? How do you do fraud detection in Singapore on an insurance stuff which you're going to sign up, and how do you do it in US or how do you do it in India? So understand the industry nuances on these industries. thereby using technology, how are you going to benefit, and then park yourself into that area, whether you maybe want to be a data scientist, you want to be a machine learning engineer, you want to be a UI specialist, or the likes of it. So it's very important to understand and connect the larger dots within the industry. But to answer your question, these two are the most important part of the industry. And the third element is many of the government services is going to go through citizen services across the world is going to go through a phenomenal change. We have seen that in India. We have seen that in India in a small way. The way we pay, whether
It's very big in Singapore.
yeah, the way
It's
the payment systems, or the way we serve pay with day-to-day interactions with the government is going to change. The way the courts are law is, imagine digitizing the entire the court proceedings, and then where you naturally it falls under an AI domain, right? So whenever a judge gives a judgment, he goes back to what is the High Court judgment on 50s and 60s. So it's a natural use case for AI. Just imagine the power of AI
absolutely.
in completely changing and reading all the judgments which has happened, and then become a law assistant for a judge or a judge assistant or somebody is doing. So that's going to change the way justice will be done, the way citizen services will be served, the way healthcare is delivered, and way sustainability itself is going to be a huge, huge job, because all these puts pressure back on the sustainability and environment, because many of these systems generate a large amount of environmental related issues. So these are some of these areas, but advice to the individual is understand the industry first, technology second, right? Rather than understanding, in our age, we understood technology first and industry second. I would rather tell them to flip the model to understand the industry. When I say industry, you have to be global in nature. It's just not India, just not Singapore. It is understand how different countries operate. So it's very, very important to get a global perspective of that industry, and then apply and then juxtapose technology on top of it, and then start learning and so on and so forth, right? You can be a coder, or you can be a product marketing person, or you can be a GTM person for a particular product in a particular market. But it is always important to have the
You
technology.
can be a recruiter even.
Absolutely, you can be a recruiter as well. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
KG, it's been really, really fabulous. Uh, I don't think there's ever a dull moment talking to you, regardless, but this is your domain, this is your topic. So it's been absolutely fabulous listening to you. I just get very excited every time I hear you talk on technology, especially because of just the content and the depth which you bring to the subject. I think a lot of people are going to benefit a lot from what you've just shared. And, here's wishing Gen Z all the very best in everything you're doing and wishing you lots and lots of success. You say you wish you were in the 20s. I actually think age is just a number. As far as your enthusiasm is concerned, you probably still are. So thank you very much, KSG, for being on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Zubin. And for the people who are viewing, and particularly the youngster community who is going to maybe look at some snippets of this, follow one principle, just say yes to everything, and then you go figure out the how to get that yes done and put a green tick mark on that yes. So
Phenomenal.
that's
Great advice.
Thank you very much.
Just say yes and make it happen. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, KSG. Thank you very much.
Thank you.